Once upon a time, on an early summer evening outside Reykjavik, I was standing on the deck of a 27-meter ship. I was gripping the handrail with both hands because the rough ocean made the bow go up and down like a mad seesaw. My eyes were fixed on the surface, trying to spot the slightest disturbance. Then, without warning, a majestic 40-ton creature, a humpback whale, half the length of the ship, jumped high in the air in front of our eyes. This is my diary of the journey that started at that very moment. I set sail to learn about and to protect this precious biosphere that we inhabit. One quest at a time. I'm in a train station with a dead bird. I presume she's died very recently, and I get a sudden interest in avian pathology. At least she has the shape of a living thing, and the eyes are still intact. Biology is the study of life, but also, in equal measure, of death. I fight the urge to back the late dinosaur and put it in the freezer for later studying. I curse my curiosity. I predict it will not take a long time before the little house sparrow, Passer domesticus, will be food for those still living. The surroundings echo suburban traffic and local ornithological fauna. At regular intervals, descending airplanes pass over with their landing gear sticking out like a falcon's talons, ready to pierce a rabbit with their crushing grip. One day, one of those birds of prey landed at the Helsinki-Vantaa airport, and while it let me out of its grip, the journey did not. The year is 2023, and I have returned from Iceland with a shaken heart and a trembling soul. Here I am, where all people start, at the beginning. I have decided to become a wildlife conservation biologist, and have no idea how to pull that off. I have an idea and a dream, nothing more. That will not be enough, but it's a perfect place to start. Not all dreams come true, but everything we achieve was once somebody's dream. In the Sandman issue 19, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Neil Gaiman said, "Things need not have happened to be true. Tales and dreams are the shadowed truths that will endure when mere facts are dust and ashes and forgot." So, I will defy the facts and dream. I'm on the move during the day. The day is short and I will only have good light from 8 to 5. This is the time when wolves, as well as their prey, are least active, but allows me to find snow tracks and droppings. There is snow up to my knees and walking is heavy. I intend to do a quick exploration around the area close to the trailer that works as my base. Just to be on the safe side, I'm carrying supplies for 3 days on my back, in addition to a handgun to disperse animals in emergencies, or even take them down if there's absolutely no other option. Passing the ridge between two foothills, I get a view of the river valley. The clear stream sings between the rocks. The banks are frozen and the wet ice glistens in the sun. Despite the short day and the fact that the sun climbs only up to 20 degrees over the horizon, I'm wearing sunglasses. Otherwise the bright diffuse light from the snow could cause permanent damage to the eyes. I spot something on the other side of the mountain stream and take out my binoculars. It's a fresh carcass of a white-tailed deer. A few American crows are having a feast. I take a sip of water from my bottle. Because of their diet and physiology, deer don't need to drink much water. During a snowy winter, they can satisfy their thirst even by eating snow. Why did the deer come here, and how did it die? Regardless of who killed the calf, a grizzly bear, a wolf, or a coyote, the carcass could attract more hungry wildlife. Should I stay where I am and observe, or should I approach to investigate? I decide to take a closer look. I find a suitable place to cross the little river, a few hundred meters upstream. I keep my eyes peeled for any tracks. Closer to my late friend, I start seeing a lot of them. I can spot at least 3 or 4 different sizes of hooves, so the calf was not alone. My heart starts pounding harder when I see paw prints. Coyote tracks look similar to wolf tracks, but the space between the toes is generally narrower. The time of year helps here too. The youngest wolves would be almost yearlings now, so their paws would be much larger than adult coyotes. There is little room for error. I found wolves. All the tracks give me the impression that a herd of 3 to 5 deer was forced out of the woods into the open area close to the river by a pair of wolves. Despite their effort, the adults could not protect the calf. The sun started to set and I had to get back to my base. I recorded the time and location, took photographs, made quick notes of my observations, and took some samples. Foremost, I wanted samples of any pathogens or toxins that the wolves or their prey may carry, but it wouldn't hurt if DNA barcodes would confirm the results of my detective work. My dream leans a bit on the romantic side, I'm sure, and makes me look like the loved child of Sherlock Holmes and Sam Steele. It's also only one of my dreams. Still, it gives me some direction. Now the first step is to chart the territory. What kinds of jobs are there? Where are they? What kind of degree do I need? Where can I find one? If they cost much, can I apply for scholarships? Do they even admit me? So I started Googling. I found a lot of descriptions of conservation biologists' work and, frankly, I found a large portion of them exciting. Campus Catalog on YouTube gives a general description.
Conservation biologists work to protect the natural world through research and observation. This work can be done in office, field, and lab environments and involves both understanding and minimizing human impacts on nature, particularly on endangered plant and animal species.
And here's an excerpt from the Wes Larson's video on the Linda Hall Library's channel when he gives an account how putting a GPS tracker on a bear goes.
So this is what our bear trap looked like. There was some really rancid, terrible meat at the end of that trap, and then a couple of goodies for the bear as well. And it pulls on the little goodie bag and that door slides shut and it traps the bear inside. And then we would show up and we'd sedate the bear in the trap, pull it out. You can see I'm holding a stethoscope there. So we'd make sure that all the vitals were okay and that bear was fine underneath that sedative. And then we put a GPS collar on those bears. And with that GPS collar, we could learn where those bears are spending time, what kind of features they're looking for on the landscape, a lot of different things that we didn't know about the bears specifically in Bryce.
Christina Lynn shares her thoughts about paths leading to the profession on her own YouTube channel.
It's not a big deal exactly what major you pick, but I would look out for majors such as ecology, environmental science, wildlife biology, natural resource management, environmental conservation, zoology, marine biology, evolution, animal behavior, and general biology with a focus on or a minor in wildlife biology or ecology. My top majors that I recommend are ecology, environmental science, or wildlife biology. The reason for that being the more general majors allow you a wider breadth of jobs that you are likely to rank high in the application process for.
All in all, there is a lot of good content out there, so I encourage the interested to go take a look. Now, these testimonies seemed useful to me, but with the caveat of being often very North America specific. How education and work life works in the different parts of the world can be very different. For instance, I could not settle for a bachelor's degree, because here in Finland, it's generally only considered a milestone on the way to the master's degree that would be embarrassing. There are many conservation biology programs in universities around the world. The problem is that as a Finnish person, I don't have a college fund and I never had. In Finland, the citizens don't pay tuition. Besides, this would not be my first degree, so the chances would be that I would have spent that money already. I also want to remind myself about my goals. Free education in my home country is a great asset. But there are reasons why I would like to study abroad.
Hyvät kuulijat, meillä suomalaisilla on erityinen luontosuhde.
Here in Finland we often boast our so-called special nature relationship.
Erityinen luontosuhde.
The expression was coined by the Prime Minister Sipilä in his 2015 live TV speech. It is highly irregular for the government to use the public broadcast service to appeal to the public, even more so since this was not a question of national emergency, though that was exactly the impression he sought. He was marketing his plan of cutting the cost of labor to lift the country's competitiveness against the rest of the world. He did not fail to install the policies that hit the public sector workers like nurses especially hard. Their effects can be argued, but I don't believe they will prevail as historical examples of economic genius. But the expression special nature relationship
Erityinen luontosuhde
lives on. It was found so funny by the actual nature people as well as many comedians and other creatives that there's even a stand-up tour by Ika Kivi by that name. I get the impression that people confuse our large inhabited areas with the real relationship. The urban people rarely see the wild, and many seek to avoid it altogether. The rural people are concerned about their livelihood, which often directly or indirectly depends on farming or forestry. It's often implied that the city dwellers don't know where their food comes from, and the green tinkering they advocate is detached from reality. I'll tell you what I think. Our relationship with nature is indeed a little bit special, but in its hostility. Our good people want to make a clear distinction between nature and human life and have definite control over it. If the non-human lifestyle comes too close, the knee-jerk is usually to shoot, poison or burn it. Nature is seen as a resource that is at our disposal, like the Bible teaches us Protestants, and the pre-conservationist thought that we can never deplete its gifts still lives on. Scientific knowledge is ignored when it contradicts personal prosperity or safety. As I am preparing this podcast, old forests, good carbon sinks and vital for biodiversity are being cut down for fuel. Hunters call for permits of exception to kill wolves, endangered in Finland as well as protected by law. They have been receiving those permits in high numbers. The recent administrative court rulings that those permits have been unlawfully given have made the hunting community behave like a kid who's deprived of their candy. The agricultural magazines as well as the local papers of rural communities have joined their forces in a huge wolf scare campaign. Incidents of wolves killing sheep or reindeer do occur, but the state will compensate for the financial losses. And I suspect that some of the cases may not be as clearly wolf-related as the reports suggest. Reindeers are an exceptionally interesting case. They do not herd in small fenced areas and farms, but in huge areas of state or private land in the north. There are 22 reindeer herding cooperatives, and their designated areas cover the whole province of Lapland, as well as half of the Oulu province. In other words, to keep wolves from eating reindeer, you would need to chase them from 1/3 of Finland's land area. Reindeer herding is an important lifestyle and livelihood for a large number of people. We know that it's been going on since the Iron Age. Nowadays, there are about 1,000 people full-time in the profession. The allowed number of reindeer is roughly 200,000, but the herders are complaining that so many fall prey to the beasts that they can't reach the number. But what would the natural number without human intervention be? The reindeer we are talking about are mountain reindeer, half domesticated in Norway in the 13th century. So there would be no such animals without human interposition. According to the Finnish Game and Fisheries Research Institute, in Inari, 3,600 reindeer were counted in the 1800s. The number went quickly up at the end of the 1800s, and in the 1900s there were 34,000 animals in the same area, almost a tenfold increase. In total, there were 128,000 reindeer then. One could think that the forests are home primarily to the wild animals like the Finnish forest reindeer. The industry trumps, though. To avoid crossbreeding and fertilization, deer fences have been built, and those brave enough to cross the border will be shot. Business first. Also, one could think that if you introduce 200,000 semi-domestic animals in the human-controlled herds into a vast land area, it would go without saying that many of them will be hunted by the wild beasts. But the disposition of the herders seems to be the animals they claim to own must be protected from the circle of life. As I have said before, I was brought up on a small farm. I'm not afraid of wolves or bears, or neither am I irritated by white-tailed deer. I don't fear rodents or snakes. The modern food storages don't carry a high risk of contamination carried by vertebrates. I have my vaccinations in check and avoid bothering animals or plants that can harm me. I barely touched our special nature relationship here, but you maybe can understand why the curriculum of many of the life science programs lean more or less transparently towards a resource for humans thinking. The nature is a warehouse for us who have removed us from nature. Or do they? The real substance of a degree is buried not in the general marketing material, meant for the decision makers, but in the actual teaching. Reading through the course descriptions of a program can paint a different picture. And at the end of the day, half of what you get out of a course is what you bring in there yourself. I decided that for me, the best route to where I want, or at least the best first step, might lead through the corridors of the University of Helsinki and its biology program. And if I get the chance, I could complement that with a degree abroad, for example in Canada or Brazil, where I now have family ties. Unfortunately, it's not simply up to my personal decision to go study at the university. Generally, there are 3 major ways in. You may be accepted based on your matriculation examination grades. The Finnish matriculation examination has a wide variety of subjects that the student chooses from. When I did mine almost 25 years ago, the structure was different. Physics, chemistry, biology, philosophy and religion were all part of the same test. But to get in that way, I would need to have passed biology and chemistry tests, which were not on the menu in the times where I come from. Still, that's a viable option. The second way is to pass the entrance exam, which is based on the high school biology curriculum. It means that I would anyways need to study that again to have a chance in the entrance exam, so why not complement my old results as well? The third way is to complete a certain set of courses in the Open University, which offers a selection of the university's courses but will cost a small sum per credit. I could do that in a year, and if the grades were good enough, I could have a chance to get in. This is a good backup plan after refreshing what I learned in high school in the previous century. I enrolled in the General Upper Secondary School for Adults, or an adult high school. I soon learned that it was now different and that it was tough. I only took biology and chemistry, but on the other hand, I did the whole 3-year course in 1 year. Working full-time, it proved to be quite a lot, especially since I aimed at the highest grades. But then again, I was not a teenager anymore. I have experience, a more stable life, and more stomach for stress. And again, on the other hand, recovery takes more time than 20 years ago. I think the greatest difference was that this time I did not rely on my intellect or luck. I rolled my sleeves and put the work into it. Being less affected by what others might think, I also used many of the study techniques that the teachers have been suggesting for decades. Back then, I didn't think making drawings, writing notes in my own words, or using colors would be cool. Looking back, I'm sure no one would have even paid attention to how nerdy I was. And I was pretty nerdy to begin with. For chemistry, I bought a molecular building set and used it to put my hands into the thought process of learning about compounds, reactions and functional groups. That was incredibly helpful. I did every exercise in the handout. I wrote notes of everything that I encountered in the biology book series. I stopped after each paragraph to make notes and copied a lot of pictures from the book. The result is 10 full notebooks that nobody will ever read, but it was incredibly helpful too. It's one thing to take in information and another thing to ingest it. Reproducing requires active participation by your brain and provokes an urge to understand. This way of learning was arduous, but it also was immediately rewarding. I remember that as a teenager, I read and reread, but that is a method with diminishing returns. Another important aspect is to do with the hands. I tried to find a way to do everything by hand. The studies can tell us that engaging the fine motor system to produce letters by hand has positive effects on learning and memory. I can give my anecdotal evidence, and since I now could trust my method, I experienced less uncertainty when going into a test. And I scored 10 across the board. The matriculation examination, on the other hand, awarded me 2 eximia cum laude approbators. The literal translation is approved with excellent praise. It is a very good grade, but not enough to let me in. At least one of them must have been laudator, or is praised, which is the highest grade. So the work continued. I bought the biology refresher course ebook and worked that until the entrance exam day. The entrance exam is nowadays digital. It was conducted in a huge hall in the Helsinki Fair Center, and I sat next to hundreds of other candidates applying to different programs. The exam is under strict invigilation. I spent the whole 3 hours, save for some 20 minutes at the end. I knew there would have been time to double-check at least the first part with multiple-choice questions, but I was doubtful it would make sense. I know from previous experience that revisiting the questions when tired is dangerous. It is no use to choose again just to pick the wrong answers. When I left the building, the transition from the giant hall with the cool air to the sunny, hot daylight felt like waking up from a dream. I might now have secured myself a place of study. Not a bad one either. The ecology program at the University of Helsinki was ranked 20th best in the world by the latest Shanghai ranking. Although it is unclear to me whether this means the ecology and evolution within biology program or the environmental study program. Biological sciences have a lower ranking of 51 to 75, which is still a good one, shared with, for example, the University of Chicago and King's College London. And even more importantly, it beats Stockholm University, and it's always an important occasion when Finland wins Sweden. On the other hand, I might not have studies waiting in September when the academic year begins. I would then initiate the plan B and try to get in through the Open University and also retake the entrance exam next year. But right now, I could do nothing. After a year of hard work, just working the day job felt like a holiday. I would now simply wait for the letter of admission or rejection. If you wish to get your experiences, ideas or comments on the show, drop a few lines or send a short audio clip to host@biospherepodcast.com. And if you like the show, please subscribe, share and leave a review. It really means the world to us. This is your host Sami dos Santos Hult. Thanks for listening to Biosphere, one quest at a time.